with LATAM, it's always been kind of something that I didn't have to force, right? It was more like just naturally evolving. There's, as you guys know, right, a massive need for crypto adoption, much bigger than it is in Europe or North America. A lot of people that focus already on LATAM rather invite LATAM-based founders to, let's say, SF or to Switzerland, things like this, but don't really go actually physically into the markets, meet the people face-to-face, experience the everyday life, right? The strictest DD, if you wish, right? European investors tend to take more time, tend to focus more on fundamental plays, right, than following trends, which is more popular in other regions, I would say. To be honest, everyone, in my opinion, should have FOMO to go to LATAM.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. I'm Ab, co-founder and CEO of Bando and Espacio Crypto. As always, I'm with my great friend Kush. He's the founder of Odisea Labs. And today we have Nicolas Weber. He's a partner in the Blockchain Founders Fund. And I'm really happy to have Nicolas here. We've been talking for quite some time now. Nicolas, how's everything going?
Oh, good. Good. Greetings from Berlin Blockchain Week. Excited to be here.
Amazing, man. I've seen in Twitter that's a lot of things happening in Berlin. Exciting. And first, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Blockchain Founders Group. What's this VC? What's the thesis? Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome, man. No, great. So, yeah, I've been in crypto since early 2017. Actually, a bit of a funny story. I had saved some money back then. Didn't know where to put it. Did some research, stumbled across Bitcoin, Ethereum, and back then also Litecoin, which was one of my first bets, and was really attracted by the spirit of decentralization. Yeah, participated in some ICOs, the usual stuff, right? Got deeper into technology together with a few others, amongst them Professor Dr. Philipp Sandner, who was my mentor. We started Amazing Blocks, which was the first to tokenize equity in Liechtenstein and have a bankless incorporation with ETH. Back then, around 2019, 2020, Liechtenstein was moving really towards true legal and transparent frameworks for tokenization, also security tokens. So in that sense, we were kind of pioneers in that domain. We moved into different verticals such as classic car, art, and real estate tokenization. Then that company transitioned into what is now Heartstocks, a large family office focused tokenization SaaS solution. For me, that was kind of the point where I was like, okay, I like this tokenization of everything, as back then was the narrative, and I still strongly believe in it. But I want to kind of get a bit more into the truly decentralized ecosystems, I would say. This then led me to co-found the Hub, which is a 3D content engine with my co-founder Camilo. He's actually from Colombia, which kind of started my journey also in terms of getting to know the Web3 ecosystem in LATAM more. We built out the Hub as one of the leading tech solutions for 3D on-chain content. It was actually 6 months ago acquired by Fitchin, which is now one of the largest Web3 communities in the gaming esports domain in LATAM. Was co-founded by Sergio Cunaguero and includes, for instance, the esports team of Messi that he co-owns with Kun, which is called Crew, and some of the leading influencer communities. Aside from that, actually 3.5 years ago, together with Camilo and a few other partners, we started investing as well as advising a few startups in LATAM, mainly on the payments, wallet, and infrastructure side. And that kind of further deepened my interest and also my focus, right, on the LATAM market. And as you mentioned, right, actually the latest news, so to say, is I'm joining the Blockchain Founders Group as a partner. The BFG, as it's called in short, is an AG, a stock company in Liechtenstein, which is a bit different than, I would say, typical fund structures, which I find quite attractive. BFG has been operating for the last 3 years as one of the leading accelerator and fund out of Germany, and with the AG based in Liechtenstein. Has, I think, roughly around 50 portcos already, typically pre-seed and seed stage focused, writing 100 to 150K checks. And about 6 months ago, and that's kind of the journey, and why BFG is making now that full focus on LATAM as a region. The new managing director of BFG, who's an old friend back from the security token days, reached out to me. He knew I was kind of doing a lot of stuff in Latin America, and he was like, "Hey, like let's build local hubs, right? That allows us to find the best local players, and especially the stablecoin payment, remittances, domains, the financial side of things, and yeah, start expanding there, right? And finding those players, bringing them into our cohorts, investing into them, and also connecting them with more investors in our network, as BFG is backed by some of the leading family offices in Germany. So it's kind of a good balance between old and new money that's involved there. So yeah, that's a little bit about the story.
Nice. Nicholas, what a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I'd love to hear more about, especially when you think about entering a new market, right? I mean, how did you go about running through that process? I think our objective
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of our work here with Frontera is to start exploring and unpacking how do we incentivize more people to do what you've done, right? And encourage
Mm-hmm.
more people to look at Latin America. So give us, like, walk us through sort of the thesis, the thought process, and a bit of the kind of lift that it has taken you to
Yeah.
get you closer to this region.
I would say even before now the move to join BFG, for me, I would say it was the personal experiences, right? By traveling into Latam, by starting more on that entertainment vertical even, and seeing kind of the amazing entrepreneurs, right? And starting to invest, right? More manually, more selectively, not in a typical VC sense, right? And I would say that basically it was not something, that happened overnight in a sense, hey, like, yeah, now let's focus on the thumb, but it was more like an organic and natural development, uh, the flow, so to say, of things, right? Where basically, if I learned one thing in my journey the last years, being an entrepreneur as well as an investor, also here and there active as an angel, you know, it's if things don't flow, then it's typically not going to work out. And I think with that time, it's always been kind of something that I didn't have to force, right? It was more like just naturally evolving. There's as you guys know, right, a massive need for crypto adoption, much bigger than it is in Europe or North America. There is, I would say, really some of the most amazing entrepreneurs I've met that are not trying to attach some token to launch and dump to some sort of product or narrative or trend, right? But rather to actually solve local needs that, of course, focus on tokenized business models, but not so much on the pump and dump hype that we've seen, starting with the ICO craze and now with these blueprint VC type of launches, right, with high FTV, low float models. So I would say that it was, kind of also my own tiredness of things, of the state of parts of the crypto market that are just kind of quick cash grabs, but really focusing on fundamentals, on narrative, and just on amazing builders, right? And that's what me personally got me personally excited about Latam. And I think more and more other people are also starting to realize this, right? That Latam is probably one of the most balanced markets for long-term adoption, but still has this asymmetry of amazing builders versus not enough capital, right? And exit paths for these investors, right, that come into data markets, where it's mainly driven by acquisitions and all these aspects, right? So that's kind of also something that I want to change. Plus, also a little bit the still existing stereotypes, right? Because what I'm seeing is also a lot of people that focus already on LATAM rather invite LATAM-based founders to, let's say, SF or to Switzerland, things like this, but don't really go actually physically into the markets, meet the people face to face, experience the everyday life, right? Which gives, I think, a much more clear picture, right? And that's also something that I would say convinced also the other partners at BFG, right? I told them, hey, come to LATAM, experience it yourself, meet the builders face to face, and really, yeah, understand the market in a much different way. And I think so far I haven't met anyone that hasn't done this journey that is not excited and wants to come back or stay or at times even move to the amazing countries in Latam.
Yeah, I think that you are describing perfectly part of why we started Frontera. I think that Kush is a really bullish person in Latin America. I personally see the demand for crypto in the region.
Yeah.
Um, for what you're saying, the way that I analyze it is that it was a natural path because in Latin America there's a lot of demand for this type of solutions. And one important thing is that there's not demand for crypto in the common sense of a pump and dump or like in the speculative way, but is demand for a better monetary system. And that's basically what crypto can help with. And I'm really happy to hear this. And I completely agree with you that a lot of Latin founders are not thinking on how to build a token or how to attach a token to a random solution. They're trying to build the next remittance corridor like Felix Pago, or they're trying to build the best way to execute payments through stablecoins like Minteo. These are a couple of episodes that we've had in the past and we've analyzed in the newsletter. And also with this in mind, I completely agree with you that there is like a imbalance of capital in Latin America. I think that when we analyze each market, we can put like a triad or like a what's this? What was the name of the Vitalik thing of blockchains? Like a trilemma. It's a trilemma,
Mm.
right? You need to have talent, you need to have capital, and you need to have problems to solve, like real problems to solve. I think that in Latin America we have a lot of real problems to solve. We have some good talent, but we still have a lag. So there's an arbitrage there because international teams can come to Latin America to solve big problems. That has happened with Dollar App. That has happened with Etherfuse. They are like an American team building in Mexico. Dollar App are Spaniards and an American building for Latin America. So there is a talent arbitrage there.
Hmm.
And this specific episode, I'd like to explore the capital arbitrage or the funding arbitrage because there's not a lot of not a not an there's not a lot of access to capital. And I can tell you that from in my perspective as a founder, I go to Mexican VCs and they don't understand crypto, so they're not interested. And we go to international VCs and they don't understand LATAM, so they're not interested. And now Bando is like a global product, and that makes it more appealing for everyone, right? So I would like to know now. You are on this active journey of bringing European capital to Latin America. Could you tell us like the specific activities that you are planning to execute? Because we've chat and you have a clear roadmap on how to activate this continent and the demand for capital. Could you explain us a little bit on how are you approaching this?
Yes, absolutely. So number one, fundraise has let's say analytical and rational elements, right? But at the end of the day, people still underestimate the personal domain. I've seen it and I've been in the situation many times where basically also from the entrepreneur seat, right, where you are in these kind of 30 to 60-minute virtual meetings, right? And it's kind of like there where you talk to analysts, right, or things like this, and the decisions are made, right? But most of the big rounds still happen in person, right? So I think going quickly to the point of asymmetry, I think that's a key issue as to why this asymmetry is still there, that people don't actually, or not enough people make that move to LATAM. And bringing us to the roadmap and strategy, basically, it's actually relatively simple, right? If you look at a lot of, in general, events, right, where it's about pitching and bringing startups and investors together, it's a lot more marketing than it is actual deal making, right? So that's where kind of we got together and thought, okay, how can we change that? How can we go to LATAM and actually focus on finding deals rather than just making a marketing stunt and hey, like we are here, we're there, and we're meeting amazing founders, and every founder is on stage pitching 3 5 minutes and asking generic or answering generic questions, right? That's not what we want. So we want to go to these different regions, whether that's Colombia, whether that's Argentina, whether that's Mexico, right? And basically meet the best 20 founders in every location on a quarterly, on a half year basis How do we get these founders into a room with us? By partnering with the one or two best local partners in the different regions, right? So it's a win-win for both, right? So let's say local accelerators that, of course, want their startups to find international investors, and vice versa for us to have a curated and trusted partner. We go into these places. We don't throw these lavish, large parties or whatever things, right? We have a very lean social gathering. The founders, we meet them one by one, actually get to know them and their story, because if you're focusing on pre-seed and seed stage, it's much more about the founder and or the team than anything else, right? And then basically, we of course also have an amazing analyst team that does the, so to say, standard due diligence process. But it's really this balance of, you know, the personal connection, the EQ, if you wish, right, plus the analytical side of things, of the due diligence that we want to do with this trip, right? And actually, for people that haven't been there, like for instance, some of the other partners at BFG, they haven't yet been so much LATAM, like maybe myself. And for them to go there, experience the needs, seeing, for instance, let's say in Colombia, the transaction with Neki, right? And then meeting a startup that works already with Neki, and these type of, let's say, stories, these type of connections, you would not make them by just looking at pitch decks or reading maybe some research report, right? It's just not the same type of connection. So long story short, going to these different regions, establishing local hubs, running periodic events, right, that focus really on deal making, having 2 to 4 deals per location. So the quality we're looking for is really high. And then basically on a regular basis running this. And then in the next step, also helping these startups that we source, that we invest into, then find also other international investors. As I mentioned before, right, we have some of the leading family offices and angels from the German tech space as LPs or investors, basically in the AG. People that had, for instance, one of the main family offices had an exit to Doc Morris, right, which is one of the biggest pharma companies in Europe, or the biggest online pharma company in Europe, right? So it's not just a typical crypto capital or tech entrepreneur capital. It's really also these traditional old money ecosystems that we can leverage, which are, I would say, high quality and long-term oriented angels, not the, hey, when token type of angel investor. Plus also our connections, of course, to other European VCs, as well as, for instance, VCs in Asia, which I'm seeing also a lot of demand and interest for LATAM, right? But of course, the distance between LATAM and Asia, it's crazy, right? In terms of the traveling. So helping also these founders, for instance, go to events in Germany, inviting them. There's, for instance, the regular portfolio day at this German castle, a little bit stereotypical, but within the wine area of Germany, having the best founders there, meeting with local VCs and investors, right? Just creating this ecosystem, this culture is really the goal, right? And that's how we want to approach it, and come from the human side of things, right? And betting on the founders than before anything else.
I oftentimes think a lot about Asia and how many comparables there are demographically, politically, socially, economically. And I'm really inspired by the Asian crypto landscape and how much that ecosystem has managed to really flourish. And it's, if you think about the 3 key regions, it's almost like Asia always typically comes number 1. Obviously, United States and Europe, I think, are other important crypto markets. But the way we also, and the way we want to move, is how do we get Latin America to be sort of a competing world force? And I actually think every day more and more it is becoming that. And I'd like to think that this sort of these podcasts and these conversations that we have, and these activations that we support are contributing to that. So that's really exciting. How, because you mentioned you sort of facilitate a lot of introductions, but you have a lot of convictions on the region, right? For people who are less convicted, how are they generally perceiving these founders? How are they thinking about the way they engage with these folks? And people who aren't, because we want to get more and more people, right? As we talked about earlier, but what are the key levers and key points we need to be driving home so that people are just incredibly excited? We talked about arbitrage already, but how do we just really make sure that people fully resonate with this region?
Yeah.
And not just resonate, but
Absolutely.
also do things, right? Because you said it's just one thing that's really frustrating is it's a lot of talk, but we need to move from talk to action, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody loves reggaeton and like the food in Latin America, but we need to deploy capital.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think there, what I've realized, if you, from the international investor perspective, and also here is let's just stick, for instance, with Europe, right? Europe actually, I would say, from the VC landscape and the investor landscape, has one of the strictest DD, if you wish, right? European investors tend to take more time, tend to focus more on fundamental plays, right, than following trends, which is more popular in other regions, I would say. And actually, in terms of the European investors, and actually in terms of also the people that we approach, in terms of the introductions, but also to actually deploy more capital into the AG, and that we can then utilize for the startup investments. It's really just actually taking the time and listening to these stories, right? And comparing the deal flow that you get. Where in LATAM you have startups that are super high quality, that are profitable at times, that have amazing founder teams, that are lean on their expenses and have a clear product market fit, right? And they are raising at similar or below valuations than founders in other regions that have literally nothing and just want to launch a token. That's it, right? And if you actually take the time to explain this to people and show them these examples, right? I think that's one of the key drivers, I would say, because it's I think it's just kind of the information overflow often of people, and the deal overflow, in a sense that you just get so many deals, so you don't, it's very hard to kind of go through the noise, right? And really have these amazing deals find their way. I think another topic that needs to be changed, or that is currently changing a little bit, thankfully, is kind of going away from these pure token plays, which, I mean, again, I believe fully in the tokenization of everything, but not every product, and most products actually don't necessarily need a token, right? So in a sense, I think the last few years have been more focused on that, and I fully agree. Asia is the most thriving region in this space, but at the same time, it has, of course, also this full focus on the token play, right? And I think with also a lot of negative examples over the last few years, and these massive launches that completely failed, right? I think now the narrative is changing again to these fundamental plays, and that's really what it's about, right? And these use case examples, basically, and the trust, right? Because I would say also a lot of the founders in Atam still don't yet have like the network, the access, right? Due to the travel, so to say, friction, due to other reasons, right? Where I think it just needs to be a process that, it's like a wave, right? It gets bigger, it comes, and I think you cannot stop that wave, but people just need to have more educational content as well, like these podcasts, right? I think to really wake up to this. And I think the current narrative, for instance, around stable coins, success stories, right? Like the Circle IPO, and all the general adoption around these topics, I think is actually the right direction that we're heading into, because it just makes kind of the adoption and the case for LATAM a lot more tangible, right? And it's just a perfect region for the next stages of adoption of crypto.
Definitely. I think that the comparisons between Latin America and Asia are they can be good comparisons at some levels, but at others, I mean, they are completely different.
Yeah.
Just like some cultural specificities, like in Korea, gambling is illegal, but playing with meme coins is not illegal. So everybody, like, it's a substitute for gambling, right? Or in other parts of Asia where there's a really grassroots need for better payment rails. That in Latin America, payment rails are pretty well solved in most of the countries, at least in Mexico and Brazil. Colombia is a really crappy. It's a really crappy payment system, and completely different. And Nicholas, I'd love to hear more on this like mental model that I was talking about, the trilemma in Latin America between talent, problems and capital. We have big problems, so we have big opportunities. Talent is developing, and capital is scarce. So in your thesis on BFG, what's more important for you, or how do you approach this arbitrage? Because there could be European founders or American founders building products in Latin America, and that's okay because the region is the focus. And there could be local founders that know better the market but have less experience. How do you approach these two opportunities? Because in my experience, a big challenge that we found is that it's kind of sad to say, but there are not a lot of high quality founders, like local founders. And once you find them, it's like you should pursue them heavily, or to help them, right? So in this arbitrage of talent, how do you see foreign Latins building for Latin America? What's more interesting for you, those cases or the grassroots builder that has been bootstrapping for a couple of years? How do you approach this?
I would say in a balanced way, right? I would say there's not like a super strict strategy in terms of saying, okay, we just focus on the grassroots builders or we focus on international builders targeting the LATAM market. I would say that so far, like you rightfully said, right, there is a few, or actually a growing and a thriving amount, but still not large of locals, very strong builders. And I think it's about finding the right ones there, which is the biggest priority. I think another aspect that I would like to prioritize over the coming 2-3 years is also actually going closer or collaborating more with the local universities, right? Because that's actually where the talent is emerging from, right? And kind of giving there a more direct path toward becoming an entrepreneur. It's actually not just a problem, quote unquote, in LATAM, but I would say it's a global problem where, kind of students and universities have a much easier path and a much more comfortable path toward the corporate environment, toward becoming a consultant or whatever, right? When they graduate from a university, and then they're like, hey, yeah, and I will work 5 years here, and then maybe I will become a founder, but I first want to finish this, or I first want to get some experience and things like this. But then what happens often is, normally, right, they start getting a family, kids, right, they're more settled, they grow comfortable, and then all of a sudden they're in their mid to late 30s, and it's much harder. It's not impossible, right? And at any age you can be a founder, and I strongly encourage that, but it's much harder, right? Because as we all know, being a founder means a lot of stress, a lot of just dynamic schedules, sleepless nights sometimes. I mean, I'm not a fan of like, risking your health for becoming a founder. I'm really strongly against that. I think you can have a relatively balanced and healthy life while still being a high hustle founder, right? But still, like it's just, I think, right when you graduate from your university, or even while you're still at university, is probably the best time to start becoming one, right? Because you also need time to learn, to adapt, to fail, to learn again, right? And improve. So in that sense, that's something that I think in the future I would like to see more. And I would like us also from the BFG side to focus more and to prioritize more, and to help kind of with that journey, right? Specifically in LATAM, to support these local founders that at the end of the day know the market the best way. But of course, there's also some interesting applications, some ecosystems, some infrastructure plays that more like target the market. But I definitely think that basically in terms of the trilemma you were talking about, that the talent amount is definitely increasing. So I would say it is balancing out more and more, and I hope that, and I'm very confident that this will change. And that's why now is the best time actually to get involved, right? As an investor, why would you wait until the market is saturated, right? You want to get in when it's early, right? I don't want to have or don't want to cause too much FOMO, but to be honest, everyone, in my opinion, should have FOMO to go to LATAM, right? Because we have these new cohorts, these new founders coming from the region, right? That also, of course, ecosystems like Odyssea are really great pushing. And in that sense, I think it's really about the balanced approach at the end, but you should really focus on the real problems, the real founders, and then kind of telling or utilizing these success stories, the adoption cases, and bringing those cases that are tangible, right? That first need to be built though, and it takes some time, and using that to convince other people, because otherwise you're just having theories. But I think what I've learned is the best, so to say, pitch to get also more investors is actually success stories, right? Something tangible that people can understand, founders that people can meet, and that gets people much more engaged and involved in investing into the region.
Great. So Nicholas, I'd love to hear more about sort of areas that you think are, as we think about wrapping up here, like areas that people who are looking into the region that they should be allocating towards. Where are some verticals that, perhaps are underinvested at the moment that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Oh, exactly. So in that sense, I think rightfully the core need and focus right now is on those financial applications. And that's definitely the right choice, because I mean, even when I got into the space 2017, right, this kind of narrative of banking the unbanked, and not just banking them, but getting also access to microloans and just a lot of help on the financial side is still not really fulfilled, right? And it's still needs room for growth. And I think that therefore the current and the past focus has been mostly on those type of applications. But as I mentioned, right, to me the next level of adoption is also on the entertainment, the culture, the creator side, because basically there is like this massive phenomenon of reggaeton, right? It was mentioned before. There is this massive phenomenon around the food, the culture, like the creators, sports, entertainment, and all these verticals that I think from an investor perspective are totally underestimated, and that really I wouldn't know many LATAM focused investors at any way. Like there's a scarce amount, but even there, right? I don't really know many that focus on that domain or at all, right? It's very rare. So, but at the same time, you have a very creative ecosystem, a lot of artists, a lot of influencers. So I think that's definitely one of the biggest growth sectors that I see also in the coming years, right? Actually, when I was on a farm in Colombia, I was speaking to this older entrepreneur that was more like on other, so to say, in industry verticals such as agri-tech and so on. And he told me we are moving into this happiness economy, right? It's this long thesis, but of course, with automation from AI, our daily lives becoming more lean and efficient, so to say. It's rightfully that we're moving toward that, and Latin culture is such a global phenomenon that it's heavily underrated, I think, in terms of crypto adoption and how technologies like NFTs, how creator tooling and all these aspects can change that. So that's definitely one of the biggest growth verticals that I see. Outside of that, I think it is already starting to grow is more on the agri-tech side, right? There is some projects from the region that are coming, and I think it's a little bit paradox that, for instance, the stablecoin adoption is fully focused right now on almost fully focused on stablecoins that are fiat, right? Whereas with crypto, we actually want to move away in some way from fiat. I understand it's needed as an intermediary step, but I do believe there is also a huge opportunity in tokenizing stable material agriculture assets, right? There's initial initiatives, for instance, I don't know, you may have heard of AgriToken from Argentina, right? That is tokenizing soybeans and things like this that I think definitely have a very interesting future in LATAM. So that's still also underrated. And the third sector that's, I think, on no one's radar yet, but also personally excites me is the whole DeSci environment, right? Where I think there could also be some interesting plays coming out of LATAM, which is generally a newly developing scene. I mean, it's not that new, but it's still very small. For instance, here in Berlin, there was just last week the DeSci Summit, and I would say it reminds me a bit more of the older days in crypto, and you have a bit more. I don't want to offend anyone, but a bit more IQ, quote unquote, in these events than at some of the others. And I think also that could be a big opportunity, because I've been thinking recently, a lot more about what's going to be the big meta, right? In the future, we had metaverse, we have now AI. And personally, I think biotech as a whole could be a strong domain. And actually, for instance, when we were in Colombia, in Bogota, early this year, we also met two amazing builders focusing on that topic, which I honestly also didn't expect, but I think that could also be something because it's more consumer focused, it's more research driven, and there is, of course, some amazing universities. There is an underrated healthcare scene, for instance, in countries like Colombia with some of the best hospitals in the region. So that's, I would say, also maybe in the coming years something that's going to grow. Maybe more on the cosmetics or the longevity verticals than anything else, but definitely something also to keep an eye out. But I would say the entertainment one is probably the most bullish bet in the
How do I
medium
long
term.
reggaeton?
Yeah, exactly. That's I think an interesting product potentially that someone should build.
Yeah. Nicolas, thank you for coming to Frontera. Definitely. We are, well, specifically, I'm really excited for everything that you're building, bringing European capital to Latin America. I think that some great mental models like the LATAM trilemma are coming out of this pod. How can people contact you? How can people access BFG if they want to pitch? What's the best way to reach out?
hmm No, absolutely. I mean, basically, there's regular cohorts that BFG is hosting that people can, of course, apply. There is the upcoming events that we're going to do. So we will be in August 21st hosting an event in Medellin. After that, in Sao Paulo, in Peru, in Lima, and then, of course, in Mexico City. So in that sense, pretty soon we are going to announce those events officially, so every founder can apply, register, and we'll go through the due diligence initially with them. So I think that would probably be the most direct approach. And of course, everyone can also contact me personally on X or Telegram at the Nicolas Weber, or on LinkedIn as well. So I keep an eye on my socials, and I'm open to DMs as well.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you, Nicolas. You can reach out Kush at 0xkush on X. You can contact me at AbrahamCR also on X. And as always, thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for coming, Nicolas. Take care. Bye bye.
Ciao.